This is my car and my home. Please check my ID before proceeding.
I said step out! You're being detained for vehicle theft and resisting arrest!
I am Judge Patricia Williams, a federal judge. Please verify.
Ma'am, step out of the vehicle. Now. The voice carried that particular edge, sharp, impatient, already convinced of guilt before a single question had been answered. She didn't move immediately. Her hands remained visible on the steering wheel, fingers relaxed, posture upright. The kind of stillness that comes from discipline, not fear. I asked you a question. Are you going to comply? Or are we going to have a problem? Officer, I'd like to understand the basis for this stop. What articulable facts led you to initiate this seizure? The flashlight beam swung upward, cutting across her face. Harsh, deliberate, articulable facts? You've been watching too much TV. This vehicle was reported stolen. You match the description. That's all I need. I'd like to see the report. And I'd like your name and badge number. A laugh. Short. Contemptuous. You'll get what I give you. Right now, you're going to step out or I'm going to remove you myself. Your choice. The air between them thickened. She could hear his partner shifting weight behind the patrol car door. Radio static crackled somewhere in the background. The street was empty except for a single porch light 2 houses down. She reached slowly for the door handle. Smart move, he said, but his voice carried something else now. Not relief. Not professionalism. Satisfaction. The kind that comes when someone believes they've already won. It was a Thursday evening in October, 8:47 p.m., in a quiet residential neighborhood on the north side of Detroit. The streets were lined with modest 2-story homes, front lawns bordered by chain-link fences, cars parked in driveways under the amber glow of streetlights that hummed softly in the autumn air. The temperature had dropped into the low 50s. Most people were inside finishing dinner or settling in for the night. Officer Bradley Malone had been with the Detroit Police Department for 11 years. He worked the second shift, 3 p.m. to 11 p.m., patrolling sectors that included middle-income neighborhoods, strip malls, and arterial roads connecting the city's northwest quadrant. His personnel file showed a mix of commendations and complaints. 3 awards for traffic enforcement excellence, 2 for community outreach participation, and 7 formal complaints alleging excessive force, racial profiling, or unprofessional conduct. None had resulted in suspension. Most had been marked unfounded or not sustained. Internal affairs had cleared him each time. His partner that night was Officer Jennifer Calloway, a rookie with 14 months on the force. She'd been paired with Malone for field training purposes, though she'd technically completed her probationary period. She was quiet, observant, still learning the unwritten rules about when to speak and when to stay silent. They'd been driving east on 7 Mile Road when the call came through dispatch. A silver 2019 Honda Accord, Michigan plates, reported stolen from a grocery store parking lot in Farmington Hills earlier that afternoon. The registered owner claimed she'd left the keys in the ignition while running inside for milk. The vehicle had last been seen heading toward Detroit city limits. Malone spotted the Accord at a red light near the intersection of 7 Mile and Losser. He ran the plates through the mobile data terminal. The system flagged it. Stolen vehicle. Proceed with caution. There's our girl, he said, pulling into the left lane. Calloway glanced at the screen. Want me to call for backup? For a traffic stop? Relax. It's one person. Probably some kid. The Accord turned right onto a residential side street. Malone followed, activating his lights. The Honda slowed, signaled, and pulled to the curb in front of a house with a neatly trimmed lawn and a late-model sedan in the driveway. Malone stepped out, adjusting his duty belt. His flashlight was already in his hand before his boots hit the pavement. Calloway exited more slowly, positioning herself near the passenger side of the patrol car, watching. The driver's window of the Accord rolled down. Malone approached, shining his light directly into the cabin. The beam swept across the dashboard, the seats, the rearview mirror, and finally settled on the driver's face. A black woman, mid-50s, short natural hair, glasses, dressed in a charcoal blazer over a cream blouse. No jewelry except small silver earrings. Her purse sat on the passenger seat, closed. Her phone rested in the cup holder, screen dark. Malone's expression didn't change, but something in his posture did. He'd already decided. Her name was Cassandra Williams. She was 53 years old. She lived 12 minutes away in a condominium complex near Palmer Park. She'd been driving home from a late meeting downtown, a review session with court staff regarding upcoming docket changes for the federal district. The meeting had run over. Traffic on the Lodge Freeway had been heavier than expected. She'd taken surface streets to avoid it. She was tired, not exhausted, but carrying the low hum of fatigue that comes from a long day of reading motions, listening to arguments, weighing evidence. She'd planned to make tea, review a sentencing memorandum, and be asleep by 11. She did not plan to be pulled over. Cassandra had grown up in Detroit. Her father had been a union electrician. Her mother had worked as a nurse at Receiving Hospital for 31 years. She'd attended Cass Technical High School, graduated summa cum laude from the University of Michigan, and earned her J.D. from Yale Law School. She'd clerked for a Sixth Circuit judge, worked as a federal prosecutor for 8 years, and spent another decade in private practice specializing in civil rights litigation before her appointment to the federal bench. She had been a United States District Court judge for the Eastern District of Michigan for 6 years. She knew the law the way a watchmaker knows gears. And she knew what was happening the moment Malone's flashlight hit her face. She recognized the look, the slight narrowing of his eyes, the shift in his jaw, the way his hand moved closer to his belt. She'd seen it in depositions, in courtroom testimony, in the faces of defendants who'd been caught on camera doing exactly what they swore they hadn't done. It was the look of someone who'd already written the narrative. When Malone demanded she exit the vehicle, she complied slowly, keeping her hands visible. She stepped onto the curb, her low heels clicking softly against the concrete. The air smelled faintly of gasoline and someone's charcoal grill from earlier in the evening. A dog barked 3 houses down. "Turn around." Hands on the vehicle. She turned, placed her palms flat against the roof of the Accord. The metal was cool under her skin, slightly damp from the evening humidity. "Officer, I'd like to know the legal basis for this stop." "I already told you. Stolen vehicle. This vehicle is registered to me. I can provide documentation." "Sure it is. That's what they all say." His hands moved across her sides, her pockets, her waistband. Not gently, not professionally. The kind of search designed to intimidate as much as investigate. She felt the pressure of his fingers through the fabric of her blazer, the rough scrape of his palm against her hip. She remained silent, breathing steady, mind cataloging every detail. Calloway stood near the patrol car, watching. Her face was unreadable, but her hand rested near her radio. She hadn't drawn her weapon. She hadn't moved closer. She was waiting. "You got ID?" Malone asked. "In my purse. Passenger seat." "Stay here." He walked to the open driver's door, leaned in, and pulled the purse toward him. He unzipped it without asking permission, rifling through the contents. Wallet, tissues, pens, a small leather portfolio embossed with the seal of the United States courts. He pulled out her driver's license and registration, examined them under his flashlight. Cassandra stood motionless, her back to him, hands still on the car. Malone walked back to the patrol vehicle. She heard him talking to dispatch, his voice low and clipped. She couldn't make out the words, but she caught the tone. Confident, certain, casual. He returned 2 minutes later. "License comes back to you," he said. "But the vehicle's still flagged stolen. So you're going to need to explain how you're driving a stolen car with your name on the registration." She turned slowly to face him. "Because it's not stolen, officer. And you know that now. I know what dispatch told me. Then you should also know that a clerical error doesn't constitute probable cause for continued detention." His eyes narrowed. "You a lawyer or something?" "Or something." Malone crossed his arms. The leather of his duty belt creaked as he shifted his weight. Behind him, A streetlight flickered twice, casting unstable shadows across the pavement. "Here's what's going to happen," he said. "You're going to sit tight while I figure this out. And if you keep running your mouth, you're going to find yourself in the back of that car." "Officer, I've provided my license and registration. Both confirm ownership. Your continued detention violates the Fourth Amendment." He laughed, short and sharp like a bark. "Fourth Amendment, right? You people always think you know the law better than the cops." The phrase hung in the air. "You people." Cassandra's expression didn't change, but something behind her eyes sharpened. She kept her voice level, clinical. "I'd like your name and badge number. And I'd like to speak with your supervisor. You'll get my name when I'm done here. And my supervisor doesn't come running every time someone gets pulled over and doesn't like it." He turned back toward the patrol car. Calloway was still standing near the passenger door, her hand now resting on the hood. Her face was pale under the streetlight. She looked like she wanted to say something but couldn't find the opening. Malone keyed his radio. "Dispatch for 7-2. Run the VIN on this Accord again. Driver's insisting it's not stolen. But something doesn't add up." The radio crackled. A pause. Then a flat, tired voice responded. "For 7-2, we show that vehicle flagged stolen out of Farmington Hills. Report filed at 16:42 hours. Silver Honda Accord, plate matching your traffic stop." Malone glanced back at Cassandra. His jaw tightened in what might have been satisfaction. "There you go. Dispatch confirms it. So unless you've got a bill of sale from this afternoon, you're going to need a better story." "Officer, that report is in error. I've owned this vehicle for 2 years. I can provide proof of purchase, insurance documents, and title history, all of which are accessible through the Secretary of State database." "Sure, and I can provide a leprechaun. Doesn't mean it's real." He walked toward her again, slower this time, his boots scuffing against the asphalt. The smell of his cologne, sharp, synthetic, too strong, mixed with the faint odor of sweat and old coffee lingering on his uniform. He stopped less than 3 feet away, close enough that she could see the small coffee stain on his collar, close enough to intimidate. "Turn around. Hands behind your back. You're arresting me? I'm detaining you pending further investigation. If you resist, it becomes an arrest. Your call." Cassandra's pulse remained steady. She'd been in rooms with men far more dangerous than this. Men with badges and guns and Supreme Court precedent on their side. Men who'd lost anyway because they'd underestimated her preparation. She turned, slowly, hands moving behind her back, wrists crossed. The cuffs snapped shut. Cold metal, too tight. The edges bit into her skin, and she felt the immediate pressure against the small bones of her wrists. She didn't flinch. "Officer, those cuffs are too tight. They're causing pain and restricting circulation." "They're fine." "They're not. Policy requires you to check for proper fit. 2 fingers should slide between the cuff and the wrist." "I know the policy." "Then follow it." His hand gripped her upper arm, hard, fingers pressing into the muscle just above her elbow. He guided her toward the patrol car with more force than necessary, each step deliberate, performative. Calloway finally spoke. "Brad, maybe we should..." "We should what, Calloway? Let her go because she's got a vocabulary?" He opened the rear door of the patrol car. The interior smelled like disinfectant, stale fast food, and something sour she couldn't identify. The vinyl seats were cracked in places, the floor mat stained dark. "Watch your head." He placed his hand on the top of her head, pressing down as she ducked into the back seat. Not gently. The door slammed shut. The sound echoed down the empty street. Inside, the air was stifling. No climate control in the rear compartment. The plexiglass partition separating her from the front seats was scratched and smudged. She could see Malone through it, walking back to her vehicle, his flashlight scanning the interior again. He was looking for something. Anything. Her briefcase was visible on the back seat of the Accord. Black leather. Monogrammed. Containing nothing incriminating. Just case files, a legal pad, and her laptop. Malone opened the rear door of the Accord without a warrant. without consent, without exigent circumstances. He pulled the briefcase out, set it on the trunk, and unzipped it. Calloway approached him. "Brad, should we wait for—" "Wait for what?" "She's in custody. This is inventory." "It's not inventory if we're not impounding the vehicle. It's about to be impounded." He rifled through the briefcase, pulled out the legal pad, flipped through pages of handwritten notes, case citations, sentencing guidelines, margin notes in precise script. He found nothing useful. Then he found her business cards. He held one up to the light. "Read it." His expression didn't change immediately. It took a moment. A slow, creeping realization spreading across his face like ink in water. But he said nothing. He slipped the card into his pocket. Calloway saw it. Her eyes widened slightly. She opened her mouth, then closed it. Malone walked back to the patrol car and climbed into the driver's seat. He glanced at Cassandra in the rearview mirror. Their eyes met for half a second. Then he looked away. "Dispatch for 7-2. I'm transporting one female to the station for processing. Suspected auto theft. Copy. For 7-2. The engine started. The car pulled away from the curb. Through the rear window, Cassandra watched her Honda Accord recede into the distance. Still parked under the streetlight, driver's door open, her briefcase sitting on the trunk. The ride to the station took 9 minutes. Malone didn't speak. Calloway stared out the passenger window. The radio occasionally crackled with other units calling in traffic stops, disturbances, routine checks. Cassandra sat in silence, wrists aching, mind running through procedures, statutes, case law. She thought about Terry versus Ohio, Florida versus Royer, Rodriguez versus United States, every wrongful detention case she'd ever ruled on. She thought about the officers who'd sat in her courtroom, confident and smug, until the video evidence played. She thought about how they looked afterward. The patrol car pulled into the station lot. Fluorescent lights bathed everything in harsh white. The building was squat, brown brick, institutional. A few other patrol cars were parked in the lot. An officer walked out carrying a Subway sandwich and a big gulp. Malone parked, got out, opened her door. Out. She slid across the seat, her heels catching briefly on the floor mat. He gripped her arm again, pulling her upright. The pressure on her cuffed wrists sent a sharp jolt up her forearms. They walked her inside. The desk sergeant looked up from his computer. Mid-40s, gray temples, reading glasses perched on his nose. He looked tired. "What VE we got?" "Auto theft. Vehicle flagged stolen. She was driving it." The sergeant glanced at Cassandra, then at Malone. "She got ID?" "Yeah," says the car's hers. Registration matches her name, but dispatch confirmed it's flagged. So it's a clerical issue. Or she's lying. The sergeant sighed. He pulled up a screen, typed something, waited, read. His expression changed. Not dramatically, just a slight tightening around his eyes. He looked at Cassandra again. Longer this time. "Malone. Booking room. Now." The booking room was small. Cinder block walls painted pale yellow. A single metal table bolted to the floor. 2 chairs. A camera mounted in the corner. Red light blinking. The desk sergeant closed the door behind them. Malone stood near the table. Calloway hovered by the door, her face unreadable. The sergeant turned to Cassandra. "Ma'am, I'm Sergeant Hayes. I'm going to need your full name for the record." "Cassandra Marie Williams." "And your occupation?" She paused. Not for effect. Not for drama. Just long enough to let the weight of what came next settle into place. "I'm a United States District Court judge for the Eastern District of Michigan." The room went silent. Not the kind of silence that comes from shock. The kind that comes from the floor dropping out from under you. Malone's face drained of color. His hand, which had been resting casually on his belt, went rigid. His mouth opened slightly, then closed. He looked at Hayes. Hayes looked at the floor. Calloway's eyes widened. She took a step back, as if physical distance might insulate her from what was about to happen. You're. Malone's voice cracked. He cleared his throat. Tried again. You're a federal judge. Yes. And you didn't think to mention that? Her expression didn't change. Cold. Precise. Clinical. I shouldn't have to. The Constitution doesn't require credentials to invoke Fourth Amendment protections. But since you asked, I've been on the bench for 6 years. Before that, I was a federal prosecutor for 8. I specialized in civil rights violations under 42 U.S.C. Section 1983. I know the law, Officer Malone. I know it considerably better than you do. Hayes moved immediately. Get those cuffs off her. Now. Malone hesitated. Just for a second. Then he pulled out his handcuff key and stepped behind her. His hands were shaking. The key scraped against the metal before he found the lock. The cuffs clicked open. Cassandra brought her hands forward. Deep red marks encircled both wrists. The skin was indented where the metal had pressed too tightly. She rubbed them gently, restoring circulation. Ma'am, Hayes began, his voice careful, measured. I apologize for. Sergeant Hayes, I don't want an apology. I want an incident report. I want the body camera footage from both officers preserved immediately. I want the dashcam footage. I want the dispatch recordings. And I want the name of your chief of police and the city's legal department. Hayes nodded. Yes, ma'am. Absolutely. She turned to Malone. He couldn't meet her eyes. Officer Malone, you conducted an unlawful stop, an unlawful search, an unlawful arrest, and an unlawful seizure of my property. You ignored exculpatory evidence. You applied excessive force during handcuffing. You refused to adjust restraints after I informed you they were causing pain. You searched my vehicle without consent, without a warrant, and without exigent circumstances. And you did all of this while making racially derogatory statements. Her voice never rose, never wavered. Every single action you took tonight is a violation of clearly established constitutional law. And every single action is on camera. Malone said nothing, because there was nothing to say. The card he'd found in her briefcase, the one he'd slipped into his pocket, was still there. It read, Honorable Cassandra M. Williams, United States District Court Judge, Eastern District of Michigan. He'd known. And he'd arrested her anyway. The lawsuit was filed 6 weeks later. Cassandra Williams versus City of Detroit, Bradley Malone, and Jennifer Calloway. Filed in the United States District Court for the Eastern District of Michigan. Southern Division. Case number 2:23, CV 13847. The complaint was 32 pages. Methodical. Devastating. It alleged false arrest, unlawful search and seizure, excessive force, racial profiling, and violations of her First, Fourth, and 14th Amendment rights under color of state law. It sought compensatory damages, punitive damages, and injunctive relief requiring policy reforms within the Detroit Police Department. The city's attorneys received the complaint on a Tuesday morning. By Tuesday afternoon, the lead city attorney, a woman named Patricia Donovan with 23 years of municipal defense experience, sat in a conference room on the 9th floor of the Coleman A. Young Municipal Center with the city's risk management director, 2 senior litigators, and a representative from the city's insurance carrier. The complaint sat in the center of the table like a live grenade. Donovan read it twice. Then she read the attachments. Body camera footage transcripts, dashcam footage stills, dispatch recordings, witness statements from neighbors who'd watched from their porches, a medical report documenting the bruising and nerve compression injuries on Judge Williams' wrists. She set the document down. We have no defense, she said quietly. The insurance representative leaned forward. Explain. Officer Malone detained a sitting federal judge without probable cause, searched her vehicle without consent or warrant, arrested her on a factually baseless stolen vehicle report, ignored exculpatory evidence, used excessive force during handcuffing, and made racially derogatory comments. All captured on body camera. Then, after discovering she was a federal judge, he proceeded with the arrest anyway. He didn't know. He found her business card during the illegal search. It's on camera. He looked directly at it, read it, pocketed it, and continued the arrest. That's not ignorance. That's deliberate indifference. Silence. The risk manager cleared his throat. What's our exposure? Donovan opened her legal pad. She'd already run the numbers. Compensatory damages for the constitutional violations, emotional distress, reputational harm, and physical injury. We're looking at minimum $200,000. But this isn't about compensatory damages. This is about punitive damages. The Supreme Court has held that punitive damages are appropriate when a defendant acts with reckless indifference to constitutional rights. Malone arrested a federal judge after confirming her identity. A jury will see that as the definition of reckless indifference. How much? Juries in this circuit have awarded punitive damages at ratios of 4-1, sometimes 9:1 in cases involving clear constitutional violations by police. If they award $200,000 compensatory, they could award $800,000 to $1.8 million punitive. And that's conservative. The room went quiet again. The insurance representative opened his laptop. Typed. Read. Closed it. Our policy caps municipal liability at $2 million per incident. But punitive damages aren't covered under Michigan law. The city pays those out of pocket. Donovan nodded. Correct. And there's another problem. Judge Williams sits in the same courthouse where this case will be tried. She won't be the judge, obvious conflict, but every judge in that building knows her, respects her. She's one of them. No judge is going to look kindly on a police officer who arrested a federal judge and then doubled down after learning her identity. The senior litigator spoke for the first time. What if we move to dismiss? Qualified immunity. Donovan shook her head. Qualified immunity protects officers from liability unless they violate clearly established constitutional rights. The right to be free from warrantless searches, false arrests, and racially motivated detentions has been clearly established since the 1960s. No court will grant immunity here. And even if we tried, Judge Williams has written dozens of opinions on qualified immunity. She knows every exception, every nuance, every case. She'll dismantle the argument in her sleep. Another silence. The risk manager rubbed his face. So what are you recommending? We settle. Immediately. Before discovery. Before depositions. Before this goes to a jury. For how much? Whatever she asks. Within reason. 3 months later, the city of Detroit agreed to pay Cassandra Williams $910,000. The settlement included no admission of liability, standard language, but required the city to implement mandatory training on constitutional policing, racial bias, and de-escalation techniques for all officers. Officer Bradley Malone was terminated. The internal affairs investigation concluded he had violated department policy on searches, arrests, use of force, and professional conduct. He appealed through the police union. The appeal was denied. Officer Jennifer Calloway received a 14-day suspension without pay for failure to intervene. She resigned 2 months later. The stolen vehicle report that had triggered the stop was traced back to a clerical error in Farmington Hills. A dispatcher had entered the wrong VIN. The actual stolen vehicle, a different Honda Accord, different year, different plates, was recovered 3 days later in Dearborn. No one had bothered to double-check before Malone made the stop. The body camera footage was never released publicly. The settlement included a confidentiality clause. But within the Detroit Police Department, everyone knew. And the lesson was simple. The law doesn't care who you think someone is. Cares what you do. ACT 6, Systemic Lock plus Moral Close, 450 to 500 words. The story didn't end with a settlement check. It ended with a question that nobody wanted to answer. If this could happen to a federal judge, someone with institutional power, legal expertise, and the resources to fight back, what happens to everyone else? The people who don't have law degrees, who don't know the difference between reasonable suspicion and probable cause, who don't have business cards that make police officers go pale, who can't afford attorneys who specialize in civil rights litigation. What happens to them? The answer, of course, is that it happens to them constantly. Traffic stops that escalate into arrests. searches conducted without cause, detentions that stretch on for hours because an officer had a feeling, people told to comply or face consequences, people who comply anyway and face consequences regardless. The system doesn't catch these cases because most victims don't have the knowledge, the credibility, or the resources to fight. They take plea deals. They pay fines. They move on because fighting means risking more. More time, more money, more danger. Cassandra Williams fought because she could, because she knew the law, because she had the credentials that forced the system to take her seriously, because her voice carried weight that others' voices don't. But the fact that it took a federal judge to expose the arrogance, the carelessness, the casual cruelty of Officer Malone's actions, that says something darker about how the system operates. It suggests that constitutional rights aren't truly universal. They're conditional. They depend on who you are, how you present yourself, whether you can speak the language of power fluently enough to make people listen. Malone didn't hesitate to arrest her because he didn't believe she mattered. He saw a black woman driving a car he'd decided was stolen, and everything else, the documentation, the registration, the calm explanations, became irrelevant. His assumptions overrode the evidence. His authority overrode her rights, and he was protected by a system that rarely holds officers accountable unless the victim has the power to force accountability. The $910,000 settlement was significant. It sent a message, but messages fade. Policies change on paper and remain the same in practice. Training seminars are completed and forgotten. What remains is the question: how many traffic stops like this happen every year? How many people are detained, searched, arrested, humiliated, and dismissed without recourse? How many never make it to a courtroom, never file a lawsuit, never get their names in a settlement agreement? And how many officers like Bradley Malone are still out there, still making stops, still operating under the assumption that they can act with impunity as long as the person in front of them doesn't have the credentials to fight back? The law is supposed to protect everyone. But if you have to be a federal judge to receive that protection, then who exactly is the law protecting? If you found this story important, consider subscribing. There are too many stories like this, and most of them never get told.